In this video we'll discuss how you can do incremental refreshes on the data in a list. So an incremental refresh goes back to the server and retrieves data for records that were edited subsequent to the initial loading of the data in the list control. So let's go first now and add a button to this component to do an incremental refresh on this list. So we'll go over here and we'll give focus to this button, and then we'll go to define controls and we'll choose here list detail view buttons, and we'll add a button to do an incremental refresh on list number 1. So this is going to go ahead now and add a new button, and if we look at the click event here, we'll see that this button is executing the refresh list data method, passing in an optional parameter that specifies that we'd like to just simply do an incremental refresh. Had we left out this optional parameter here, that would have been a full refresh. So now that we've defined that, let's run this in the browser. So we have our data right now. And now let's go to the MySQL database and make some edits. So let's go to this first record and change the country to Germany 2, and then the second country to Mexico 2. So now we've edited the first 2 rows in the database, and now when we go to the client here and we click incremental refresh, you can see that we go back to the server and we get data for just those 2 rows. Now what I'd like to point out is that the incremental refresh is only going to affect rows that have not yet been edited. In other words, we will not ever do an incremental refresh on an edited row, because if you were to do a refresh on an edited row then before the data had been submitted to the server, then those edits would have been lost. So let's go now and make an edit to this row over here and change the city to, say, just Mexico, and save that. So now this is now an edited row. Now I'm going to go back to the server database and change this now to Germany 3, Mexico 3, and then also Mexico 3 over there, and then commit that data. And now I'm going to go and do my incremental refresh, and what we see now is that the data in these 2 rows got updated because these 2 rows were not dirty, but the data in this row over here did not get updated because the data in that row was dirty. So what I'd like to now do is talk a little bit about what's happening behind the scenes when you do an incremental refresh. So let's go ahead now and rerun this page. Let's go here and just undo those edits. So we'll just rerun the page now. And now what I'm going to do is go back here and edit this back to, say, 3, get rid of the 3's there, and get rid of the 3 there, and then save that. And now run the refresh, but I'm going to run the refresh with Firebug turned on so we can actually see the Ajax traffic. So I'm going to go there and hit refresh, and we can see now that the data in those 2 rows got refreshed. But when we look at the response that got sent back from the server to the client, we can see that there's just a small amount of data that got sent back. Just the data for the 2 rows that had been changed on the server was sent back. So the difference here between the incremental refresh and the full refresh is a small amount of data that gets sent from the server back to the client. So then the question is, how did the server know which records had been edited? And the way that the server knows that is if we go look now not at the response but at the post, we can see that when we made this request to the server to do an incremental refresh, what we sent back to the server was a checksum of all of the rows that are currently in the list control. So the server was able to easily determine from this checksum here which rows had been edited on the server and therefore needed to be sent back in the response. So the incremental refresh allows you to do updates on the data that you have in a list without performing a full refresh. Thanks very much for watching.